Hi, I'm Jeff Moran. I want to welcome you to True Texas History. Today, in the history of Texas, December the 4th, 1835, is when the episode occurred where Ben Milam arrives at the camp of the Texas soldiers, and he's dismayed at how the leaders are wanting to pack up and go home because winter's setting in, and they didn't see much chance of them taking San Antonio, and just a lot of malaise. But Ben Milam comes in and addresses them. Who will go with old Ben Milam into San Antonio? And 300 men volunteer. Now, that led to the siege of San Antonio and the capture of it. But what I want to focus on today is talking about the early life of Ben Milam. Because he comes on the scene, and most of us, in our Texas history classes, we hear that. But who was old Ben Milam, and what's the story behind him? Well, he was born in 1788 in Kentucky. Now, he's not the only Milam associated with Texas. You also have his younger brother, who later came to Texas, and also a nephew that came to Texas. But Ben Milam, he served in the U.S. military in the War of 1812, and I believe he might have worked his way up to being a lieutenant. Somehow he found his way down to New Orleans and tried to engage in some trade with South America, of all places. And they were trading flour, but apparently on the journey, the captain got sick and died, as well as a lot of the crew, and he just barely survived the whole shipping incident. Barely made it back. He was reported to have been nursed back to health by David Burnett in Texas, who at that point was living among the Indians. Of course, at that point, it was still Spanish Texas. Now, Ben Milam somehow made his way to New Orleans, and while in New Orleans, he got caught up in the whole Dr. James Long episode, and they were going to try to take Texas. Now, there's some debate as to whether or not they were taking Texas to join the United States, or whether Texas was going to be independent. There was an episode down in Florida and also West Florida where U.S. forces come in, they take over from Spain, and then it becomes U.S. territory. And they didn't know if this pattern was going on or not. But he did participate in the Long expedition, and they were captured. He was later released. He developed close relations with General Tres Palacios during that time, and it was on that expedition that he was given the title of colonel, because later on you're going to find that he's referred to as Colonel Ben Milam. And in my mind I was saying, okay, who made him a colonel? It was during the Long expedition, and he ended up on one of the Long expeditions, because there was a couple after Long was killed. There was this almost revenge thing where they came back to Texas. And about that time, there was a lot of unrest in Mexico wanting to throw off the Spanish authority, which they succeeded at. Milam managed traveling to several of the cities where the rebels had already overthrown Spanish authority, and he made connections. And then when the new Mexican government took power, he joined the Mexican army, ended up, apparently doing pretty well there. While in the Mexican Army, he became a Mexican citizen, so he was, legitimately a citizen of Texas. He had some military background. He also hooked up with a General Wavell, who was a British officer who had joined the Mexican forces and actually had written several books on strategy and military tactics. So Ben Milam knew a few things and had made some of the right connections. And in fact, Milam and Wavell went in together on some silver mines around Nuevo Leon in that region of Mexico. So he had some vested interests in Texas and what was going on now when the revolution started unfolding. Old Ben Milam was called into service. Actually, as things were getting a little heated, now I say a little heated, I mean literally, Santa Anna overthrew the Mexican government and took charge. And that threw a lot of things into disarray. A lot of the promises that were made to Texas were being welched upon because the region of Tejas had some agreements with with Mexico under the Constitution of 1824. Hence, that's why the flag with the 1824 on it. And Santa Anna was not going to adhere to that. And during this time is when the governor of Texas, Viesca, and Milam were traveling. Viesca was trying to escape to avoid the clutches of Santa Anna. They ended up getting caught and taken to prison in Monterey. Now, while in Monterey, some of the jailers took pity on them because they were sympathetic to the old government of Mexico as opposed to Santa Anna. They arranged for Ben Milam to have a horse, and they went ahead and escaped and made their way back to Texas. And in fact, when George Collingsworth and that force was about to take Goliad, the sentry saw somebody moving and said, "Who goes there?" It is. And the Texans replied, let him know that they were Texas troops, and they want to know who he was. He says, Colonel Ben Milam. And they were thrilled. I mean, here's Ben Milam shows up. They had heard he was in prison, and now he's out. And so he participated in the attack there on Goliad. And he was also, after that, went to Gonzales and was sent out on a scouting mission and down to essentially South Texas. And when they came back, that's when the whole episode that led to the storming of Behar and the taking of the city, and who will go with old Ben Milam into San Antonio. But old Ben Milam was an old revolutionary warrior who had fought against Spain, who had served in the Mexican army, who had served with the Long Expedition. Long Expedition has a whole other story behind it. I may have to go over that sometime, but wanted to go ahead and give you some background as to who old Ben Milam was and the significance of him. Hope you enjoyed it. I probably need to do another one on Ben Milam to bring you up to date. But until next time, this is Jeff Murrah wishing you vaya con Dios. If there's other people or topics you want me to address, please leave your comments below and I'll be glad to get to them. Thank you for tuning in. See you later. Goodbye. Vaya con Dios.